toward the end, people, just general public, can get up and speak for 3 minutes. They call you up, you speak for 3 minutes. Thank you, your time's up.
Now,
you move on your way.
Strict about that rule?
Yes and no. It depends on their mood. I don't know. It depends on,
how many people speaking there are.
Yeah, is there a long line? Are they worn out? Has it been a long meeting? So there were a couple of people, they wrapped them at 3 minutes, and, and people went on. Now, you can say, may I have 30 more seconds? And they'll typically give you 30 more seconds. But these people wrapped and went on. Well, Craig Lee got up, and Craig Lee is an African-American. He's an activist. He goes to a lot of the city council meetings, and he speaks on a lot of issues. He was there to support Paul Pratt and was talking about that yesterday. Well, his 3 minutes was up, and John Settle was in the audience, and John is a community watchdog, and he goes to all these meetings. Well, I'm going to preface that by saying he had, prior to the meeting, he told me.
Settle, you mean?
Yes, he told me he had texted all of the city council members and told them they needed to be fair about the 3-minute rule. Whereas if you shut down some people, you got to shut down them all. And he is making a claim that the city council was shutting down white people and letting African Americans go longer than the 3 minutes. I don't know that to be true. That's Settle's claim. So when Craig Lee, an African American, was speaking, Settle can be heard just barely in the audience saying, time's up, or something like that.
At the 3 minute mark.
At the 3 minute mark. At which point, Craig turns to him and said, shut up. You hear him very loudly say, shut up, to Settle. And I'm thinking, ooh, this could get interesting. Well, after that, a couple more speakers come up, and you go on your merry way. But Chief Crump gets up, and he's speaking about the situation with the officer on video. So it's very, everybody wants to watch. Well, there's only a couple people left in the meeting, audience members. And all of a sudden, the two people who are left in the meeting quickly turn and look toward the back of the room.
Like something's going on.
Something's up.
Yeah.
At a moment, the chief turns toward the back of the room while he's speaking. Like, what's going on back there? So I'm thinking something's happened outside, and I need to find out. Well, I knew John Settle was in the room. I had his number, and he was gone from the meeting when this happened. So I'm thinking he's right outside. He must have seen it. So I texted him, and I said, what happened out in the lobby? Was there some sort of skirmish? Because I could tell something happened. And he said, how'd you know? And I told him kind of what I told you. And he goes, so I said, what happened? And he told me, he said, Craig Lee slammed me into an elevator. Slammed me up against an elevator. And I said, well,
the guy he called
time on, the guy who told him to shut up.
Okay.
And he said, and we were escorted to our cars by deputies. And he said, and I'm thinking about filing charges against him, or something to that effect. I said, was anyone arrested or charged at that point? And he said, no, not to his knowledge. But he was walked to his car by a deputy. Craig Lee had gone into the restroom, but he assumed he was walked to his car as well by a deputy.
So you got a text, or?
And then John texted me, and I asked who started it, how did this all get started? And Settle, let me get to the right text, because I've got so many texts this morning regarding this.
Now let's set the stage here. Craig Lee is about 50 years old.
He's 50. He'll be 51 this year.
John Settle is a little bit older than me. He's 67.
Yeah.
In that range.
I have formally issued a public records request, FYI, to the sheriff's office, which handles security.
Because you want the vid.
Because I want the video from out there in the lobby, because they have cameras everywhere.
You texted John.
John and I were texting, and then he said, I do not know if I touched Craig first.
So you had asked who?
Yeah, how did this all start?
Right.
He said, I do not know if I touched Craig first. If I did, he's legally entitled to push me back, but not the second time when he threw me into the elevator doors. I will pursue one way or the other. And if the council does not enforce the 3-minute rule uniformly, I will sue. So I've just got off the phone. You heard my conversation with Craig Lee.
During one of the commercial breaks, and you were writing like a stenographer on meth.
Craig had some really harsh words to say for Mr. Settle.
Read us your notes.
Well, can I read them all? He calls him a white supremacist, a prima donna. He says he has no business doing some of the things he does. He thinks he can do anything he wants at City Hall and get away with it. He said, I was walking back into the chamber with another gentleman, and Settle made some comments to me out there in the lobby and then put his finger in my chest, like poking me in the chest. Like, you can't go over your 3 minutes.
So basically, according to Mr. Lee,
that Settle touched him
Mr.
first.
Settle tapped him on the lapel.
Yes.
Previously, Mr. Settle had said to you, I don't remember what happened, but if I touched him first.
And then he said he pushed him away, pushed him, I guess, up against the elevator.
It's Craig talking now.
And he said, don't ever touch me again. And Craig did tell me he was walked to his car, by deputies out of the building. But, he said he expects, he said John is very litigious and he expects him to try to do something with regard to this. But he said there are witnesses. There is going to be video of Settle touching him first. So I just, it's just kind of nutty when you think, are we in Mayberry?
What did Matt say? It's like a couple of guys on the playground, like a couple of kids on the playground. By watching the reaction in the chamber,
yes, I thought there was fisticuffs. I thought there was a throwdown out there.
If I touched him first.
Yeah, if I touched him first.
It was almost a half hour ago. It's a little fuzzy.
So I have spoken to the Sheriff Prater, and I have issued a formal public records request for the video. And we'll see what it shows.
And which of the two calls you back next?
Oh.